And God had chose.
Jesus! We had a gentleman come in, and he went to sit down doing prayer, and he sat there for a few minutes, and then after prayer he got up and he went back in our pastor's office, and then I heard two shots. It wasn't a minute, and I heard two shots, and so I just got everybody out of the church. And, we just kept hearing shooting, bang, bang, bang.
Do you remember the chilling moment when a pastor in North Baddock, Pennsylvania, stood before his congregation delivering a sermon?
Inside the church, Pastor Schooler was dead. Outside, his brother Daniel, handcuffed, led off by police.
We're just in shock. We could not have seen this coming.
Daniel and William were two of 13 siblings, a large family.
I love both of my uncles.
A family tonight both grieving and asking that one question, why?
I love both of them. No matter what, I love both of them. And we stick together. We're family, and we'll stick together.
As the room settled into prayerful silence, a man in the pews slowly stood up. Without warning, he aimed a gun directly at the pastor. The atmosphere in the sanctuary turned heavy. Hearts stopped. The congregation gasped in horror as the gunman squeezed the trigger. But in a twist of fate, the weapon jammed. The pastor lived to see another day. But in this story, Reverend William B. Schooler would not be so fortunate. He wouldn't get that miracle. This is the life and the tragic death of Reverend William B. Schooler. We had a man walk in. He seemed quiet, almost unassuming. He joined us during prayer, sitting there as if nothing was wrong. But then, without saying a word, he stood up and walked straight into the pastor's office. Moments later, we heard it. 2 gunshots. Then more. Bang, bang, bang. It was like time stopped, and the sound of gunfire kept echoing through the church. It felt like it would never end. These haunting words came from a church member who was present on that Sunday morning. Reverend William Schooler wasn't just another pastor behind the pulpit. To his community in Dayton, Ohio, he was so much more. A teacher who molded young minds, a veteran who had served his country with honor, a mentor who guided countless individuals, and a leader whose influence reached far beyond the church walls. But as this tragedy would prove, not even a life dedicated to service and faith could shield him from senseless violence. Born in 1945 in Dayton, Ohio, William Schooler grew up in a family that valued faith, discipline, and community. From a young age, William was known for his calm demeanor and strong sense of responsibility. By 1963, he graduated from Dunbar High School, ready to embark on a journey of service far bigger than himself. Shortly after graduation, William joined the U.S. Army and was deployed to Vietnam. His time in the military was marked by acts of courage that earned him the Bronze Star, one of the nation's highest military honors. Yet the war didn't leave him hardened or bitter. Instead, it deepened his humility and reinforced his belief in service. When he returned to Dayton, William decided to continue serving, not on battlefields abroad, but in the classrooms of his hometown. He began his career as a teacher in the Dayton public school system. Over the years, his dedication saw him rise to principal in the Jefferson Township District. For nearly 2 decades, he became a steady force for students and staff alike. He wasn't the kind of principal who hid behind closed doors. William walked the halls, greeted students by name, asked after their families, and attended community events to support them outside of school. He was as much a mentor as he was an administrator. His commitment didn't waver, even as challenges came his way. When he retired in 1997, the schools he left behind felt his absence deeply. But retirement didn't mean the end of his mission. It meant the start of a new chapter. After leaving education, William devoted himself fully to his faith. Ministry wasn't new to him. It had been a constant throughout his life. But now, he stepped fully into the role of spiritual leader as the pastor of St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church in Dayton. In his sermons, he spoke directly to the hearts of his congregation. He challenged them to grow, to love, and to find strength in their faith. On Facebook, you look for likes. In this book, the Bible, you find love. That was his style. Simple truths delivered with warmth and conviction. But his work didn't stop at the pulpit. William was active in civic affairs. He served as interim president of the Dayton School Board and led the local Baptist Ministers Union. He partnered with civic leaders, churches, and youth organizations, always seeking ways to uplift his community. Sunday, February 28, 2016, seemed like any other day of worship. The church was filled with the sound of hymns, whispered prayers, and quiet conversations among congregants. Reverend Schooler delivered his sermon with his usual passion and clarity. After the service, he stepped into his office, a small space tucked behind the pulpit. It was a room where he often prayed, prepared messages, and counseled members of his flock. But as William prayed or reflected quietly, his younger brother Daniel entered the church. Daniel, 68 years old, walked in with an air of calmness. He took a seat in one of the pews and remained still, observing the surroundings. Few took notice of him. Moments later, Daniel stood, his movements deliberate. He walked down the aisle toward the pastor's office. Then came the gunfire. Bang! 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 The sound tore through the sanctuary like a thunderclap. Panic gripped the congregation. Screams erupted as people scrambled for the exits, their shoes pounding against the church's wooden floors. Curtis Booker, the choir director, recalled, "The whole congregation ran. It was chaos. We couldn't believe it was happening in God's house." When Dayton police arrived, they found Daniel Schooler still inside the church. He didn't attempt to flee. He didn't resist arrest. He surrendered silently, his face void of emotion. Paramedics rushed to the pastor's office and found Reverend Schooler on the floor. Despite their efforts, it was too late. William had died in the very room where he had offered comfort and guidance to so many over the years. Outside, news of the shooting spread quickly. Shock gave way to grief, and grief gave way to a pressing question. Why? Investigators soon uncovered a grim history. Daniel Schooler wasn't a stranger to law enforcement. His past included multiple violent incidents tied to untreated mental illness. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder years earlier, but consistent treatment had eluded him. In 2001, Daniel was charged with assault and carrying a concealed weapon. In 2002, he brutally attacked a woman in his home, biting her, cutting her, and choking her during a terrifying 40-minute ordeal. In 2007, he struck a friend with a golf club. In 2008, he allegedly threw a hammer at two men and chased them with a knife. Each incident seemed to follow a familiar pattern. Daniel had stopped taking his prescribed medication. Yet despite warnings from courts and doctors, he remained untreated and unmonitored. The Schooler family was large, 13 siblings in all. William and Daniel had shared a close bond in their youth, but years of untreated mental illness and unresolved conflicts had driven a wedge between them. Joyce Napier, their niece, said tearfully, "I love both my uncles. I don't understand how we got here." The tragedy left the family with a dual loss. One brother murdered, the other facing life in prison. Daniel was charged with murder, felonious assault, and weapons violations. His attorneys questioned his mental competence, but after several evaluations, he was deemed fit to stand trial.
In the Gem City, police say the 70-year-old was shot and in his office as Sunday celebrations wrapped up at St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church. The suspect is his younger brother, Daniel Schooler, who has been arrested and awaiting formal charges. St. Peter's is a family church of the Schooler brothers. It was led by their father, Reverend Schooler. After their dad's death in the 1970s, older brother William took over. People say even before then, he served as a community pillar. He fought for fair access to banks when PNC tried to leave the West Town Shopping Center. Reverend Schooler also creating new initiatives for education in his nearly 3 decades of service in Dayton and Jefferson Township. Tonight, one group is calling Pastor Williams' death a tragedy and that it highlights the issue with access to guns and gun violence.
As a member of the black community that has learned from men like Dr. Schooler, we will continue to not be deterred from the greater cause, and that is the charge and cause to continue to work collectively to improve the conditions like gun violence. In Dayton, the solution lies collectively in our ability and our concern with addressing these issues. And so it is not just one solution, but it takes time. We have to build legislation, we have to do it through government, we have to do it neighborhood by neighborhood.
Investigators found no evidence of a financial dispute or revenge. They believed the motive stemmed from years of untreated mental illness and lingering resentment. Reverend Schooler's funeral was held at Omega Baptist Church. The sanctuary overflowed with mourners, family, friends, civic leaders, and countless others whose lives he had touched. They spoke of a man who lived selflessly, giving to his community until his final breath. In the wake of the tragedy, community leaders demanded answers. How did a man with such a violent history and untreated mental illness gain access to a gun? The Community Progress Institute issued a public statement. This is more than a family tragedy. It's a systemic failure, a failure of mental health care and gun laws. Reverend William Schooler spent his life fighting for justice, peace, and healing. His death became a rallying cry for reform in Dayton and beyond. Family doesn't always mean safety, and silence around mental illness doesn't make it disappear, it makes it deadly. As candlelight vigils were held and prayers echoed through the city, one message stood clear. This cannot happen again. What are your thoughts on this heartbreaking story? Share them in the comments below. If this moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more untold true crime stories.